This is Hunt Nebraska, the official podcast for insight into Nebraska's hunting and shooting sports community. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, our space for sharing stories, information, tips, and techniques. Now, Hunt Nebraska.
We are officially into the big game permit buy period. The excitement is just thick, folks. I mean, if you haven't already bought your deer permit or perhaps that archery antelope permit, you're missing out.
Well, who at this table yesterday bought a big game permit? Raise your hand.
I did.
I did as well.
I thought about it. I got really nervous when they said that the statewide buck was sold out within minutes of it opening, and I was like, oh, is that mine? Is that mine? And I was like, oh, no, I've got a state whitetail buck.
A lot of people were like, oh, no.
So, because I realized at that point, Hunter, I hadn't asked Leslie if I could buy a permit yet. And so I was like, should I buy it? Should I not buy it? Should I buy it? And then I forgot about it last night. So
you think you know so much, you plan, and then you get on there and you're like, what am I looking for?
It's kind of like you go to a Cabela's or a Shields or something like that. You can go in with a list, but as soon as you walk in and see the mounts and the aquarium and all that cool stuff, pretty soon you can spend an hour in that store and walk out later and realize, I didn't even look at my list.
Well, and yesterday you had a time limit of 10 minutes by the time you got in and when they kicked you out. So you were even a little more rushed I got to get everything.
That did
add totally ruins the shopping experience. I have to agree with you on that.
Yeah, the online shopping
experience. Yeah, you can't browse. It's like, get moving here, folks.
Nebraska's own Prime Day is the big game permit.
Yeah. It's probably not just coincidence that those two overlap.
It's like Black Friday. I mean, really, it's like our version of Black Friday. Boom, right there.
Kind of Maroon Tuesday.
Yeah, Maroon Tuesday.
Yeah, well, folks, if
I
you
call
haven't
it Blaze
done
Orange
that,
Tuesday, but
if you haven't done that, well, you are a handgun hunter. I'm more the archer. You got to think of that, the Brotherhood of the Blood. But anyhow,
the Brotherhood of the Blood. Write this stuff down.
Always.
yeah, transcripts will be available for the show following our desire to ever write them up. No, but fun times. It's starting to plan. I know folks have been doing it for a while. Make sure you get a hold of that big game guide. Best place to do that is online now because it's been updated with all the buy dates. And then for non-residents and residents, there's a few more buy dates coming up here pretty quickly for some of the limited permits that might not have been purchased or folks weren't successful in drawing. Just a few of those. You're going to want to figure that out. But also for the non-resident permits, that starts a week from basically when we're recording this. So you'll have to check that in the book because by the time you listen to our podcast, it might already be open. And you're going to want to be quick on that. But a lot of fun things. 4th of July is kind of come and gone. Those big bangs kind of get you thinking about hunting, don't they?
They do.
Everything gets me thinking about hunting.
I mean, just hearing,
doesn't take a big bang.
Those exploding stars, that's what we call the ones that just flash and make that big boom, boom.
A cool morning makes me think
I mean,
about
you start thinking of the goose pit, you start thinking of bird dog and hunting and all that stuff. And unfortunately, you got kind of a sad story about your bird dog.
I do. He decided to take him out of the season this year.
Oh, man, before it even started. I mean, Jaeger is how old?
He just turned 2 years.
English Springer Spaniel.
Yep.
You know, so the top creme de la creme of bird dogs.
Yep.
Right below a black lab. We all understand.
No, just above a black lab. Any lab.
Only if you're completely inversing the list. There, yeah. No. Anyhow, standards. And just out for a run.
Yeah, so we had some family visiting this weekend, and Clayton and his brothers went down to his dad's shop to do manly things, I guess, and brought the dogs with them, and I'm not sure the full story, but he went through a cattle panel that was broken or something and split open his back leg really well. Got 30 stitches, drainage tube, lacerated ligament in his knee.
Man.
Just
30 stitches.
Yeah.
That ligament deal, too. That's that's not a good one. Oh, geez, it'll take some time to heal. It'll heal.
It'll heal.
But it'll take time. Oh, man.
Yeah,
that's heartbreaking.
I've had several bird dogs that, get scrapes and scratches and things like that, and unfortunate incidents with barbed wire fences, but nothing quite of that magnitude.
Yep.
I mean, that obviously.
How long did they say it would take to heal?
He's out for 3 weeks of no running, no excessive movements, and then after that, I have no clue how long it's going to take him to get back into it, get back to running full speed even.
And with bird dogs, most breed springers especially, I mean, they just don't know how to.
They don't know how to stop.
Go slow.
There's go or stop.
How's he doing right now with not going? Is he? Is it limiting him?
Last night was the first night that he was up for more than 15 minutes straight.
Wow.
Before then, he was just laying. It hurt to get up, it hurt to get down, it hurt to move.
Poor fella.
So we're getting progressively more time standing up. So we're making progress.
Well, hopefully things keep going in that
Definitely.
direction, and I know for the whole household that can be that's a hit.
Yep.
That's really a hit, and obviously, like you said, hopefully by this fall, maybe sometime during bird season, he'll be back to it and able to do what he loves to do. So
Definitely, he's already watching the birds.
Yeah,
watching from the window.
Watching from the window.
Exactly. I was going to say, back to that whole
Lurking.
thinking about hunting. I mean, you're kind of watching the ditches. It's been some dewy mornings here, so you're looking for broods, maybe turkeys, pheasants, what have you. Still hearing a few quail whistle out and about, which I love hearing. But even fawns. We've saw some fawns this last. It was you and I. We were out with some of our archery mentors looking at a potential new property and saw a spotted fawn watching us as we were watching.
Anecdotally, I've talked to a number of people who said they've seen a lot more deer. And so that'll be interesting to see what things look like.
Well, I got to say, compared to last fall, this spring turkey season, I saw more deer.
Well,
why? I don't know.
Saw more turkeys in some areas. So that's good too.
So, yeah, so it's a lot of things going on there. Have you guys been to the local sporting goods store recently? I mean, they're starting to get a few new hunting things in there already.
Do you even need to ask that question? Have we been to the local sporting goods store?
Let me find it offensive.
That's a reoccurring thing.
It's like, have you gone grocery shopping
Jeff
in the last 2
Ronson,
weeks?
good to meet you.
Let me rephrase that, folks. I'm sorry for the listeners out there, and we do appreciate you joining us wherever you might be pulling us into, your car, your home, your office. We appreciate you giving us a subscribe, a big thumbs up on the Hunt Nebraska Facebook page as well. You can figure out what's going on in the hunting and shooting community here in the great state of Nebraska, and we want you to be a part of that because we know you're part of that outdoor nation. But let me rephrase that then. Have you been to a sporting goods store yet today?
It's
the day's young, folks, so you got opportunity. So
this is 8-something in the morning. I haven't started my adventure.
It's always interesting watching the progression, especially of the big sporting goods stores. You know, you can tell pretty fast by just walking into the store within, the first, 10 yards, 15 yards at most, what season is taking place. Even if you're not in familiar territory, maybe you're on a vacation or something, the next one coming up. During spring, it's all the spring turkey hunting stuff, which follows, by the way, the spring conservation orders. So there's usually a bunch of snow geese in a lot of the Nebraska stores here. Later on, we'll get into some of the waterfowl, teal especially. We'll get some time, upland birds, deer season as we get into October and all that stuff. So you can kind of follow what's going on. Right now, I'm not sure how to catalog that, and that's what I want to kind of bug you guys and pick your brains about. Because right now you go into some of them, and there's these huge feeders and rows of deer corn and deer supplement and all sorts of deer attractants. And we're talking the edible stuff, not just the scents and smells and the sounds, but it seems like deer baiting season is upon us. Have you guys noticed that just a little bit?
definitely.
Yep.
Yeah, and on even on social media too, you see people out posting. They're out at their feeders, out putting their salt licks, out doing some trimming and shooting lane work already. And
it's really grown. I don't know that I can say that I remember it being that big of a deal growing up. Now, I grew up in a spot where, and we'll get into it, baiting just wasn't allowed in relation to hunting. But also during that time, not only is that grown, but trail cameras, scouting cameras have really taken off to where they're almost, you can watch real times and all that. So kind of curious. We're going to get into this just a little bit and get into some of the are you okay?
Fighting a sneeze here. I'm good. Good. Keep going. Hurry up.
Just get it out. Just get it out. It feels so much better when it gets out. Just look straight at the light. That usually helps some people.
You don't dare sneeze anymore. No, I'm not going to do it, by God.
We're not deer hunting. But anyway, so kind of get into it. And what I've got here is we do have baiting laws here in the state of Nebraska, right? print it up each year, and our regulations usually make the big game guide, and we've tweaked those over the years. I know since I've lived here for about, this will be I believe the 16th deer season. They've been changed a couple of times. But it's one of those things that's fun. We started having a debate about this on discussion in the hallway, so we brought this into the Hunt Nebraska cabin here, folks. And we're just going to hit on it briefly because it really, we want to know what you guys and gals think out there that are listening, and make some comments down below or drop them there on Facebook, ask some questions. So we're going to start first. We got to make sure there is a rule, there is some law here in Nebraska as there are in other states. So what page was that, Jeff?
If you go to our hunt guide, the 2022 hunt guide, we're going to go right to page 37. Yeah, and under unlawful acts,
what does it say?
To find everything you need to know or want to know about Nebraska's baiting
and we're gonna,
laws.
We're going to specifically kind of zero this on big game deer more than
big
anything
game
else.
Deer here. It's illegal to hunt any big game animals or turkeys within 200 yards of a baited area. An area is considered baited for 10 days following the complete removal of all bait. The hunter, and this is another kicker here, the hunter and the animal must be outside of the baited area during the harvest or attempted harvest. Now, a baited area is any location where grains, fruits, vegetables, nuts, minerals, including salt, any natural foods, materials, commercial products containing food materials, or byproducts of such materials may attract big game or turkey. The use of scents alone, normal environmental conditions, standard farming practices, ranching practices, forest management, wildlife food plantings, orchard management, or cinema land management, none of those constitute a baited area. So
that's impressive. Hunter, did you know Jeff has a moonlight job as one of those guys that reads all the rules and regulations at the end of a commercial on radio?
Well, he's got the voice for it. So.
Only for medical commercials can I read.
Yeah,
but,
you gotta say that about 2 times faster,
yeah,
Jeff. You know.
I can, but
don't challenge him. We don't have time.
But the kicker is we have a baiting law, and it's an interesting one because it's not you can't bait. It's just it impacts when and how you can hunt if you do bait. And which is an interesting law. That is our baiting law, that you cannot hunt over bait in Nebraska within 200 yards of that area.
And to keep in mind, we're not talking food plots. We're not talking normal agricultural stuff or planting a big field of clover or anything like that. We're talking about
putting materials out for
specifically
deer
for
turkeys.
Yep. All right. So we kind of got into it because this is one of those fun, ethical fireside chats that you can have. And it all depends on probably where you grew up and what your background is and maybe what you're trying to do and all that type of stuff. But I found out, I thought it was interesting because, Kayla, since I've been a Nebraskan, we've had something similar to this. Pretty much the... Excuse me. There we go. And you were worried about a sneeze.
No.
Not anymore.
I was nervous.
You've not been able to hunt over bait here in the state of Nebraska since I got here. The rules kind of been tweaked and changed a little bit. But, Jeff, you were telling me that that's not always been the case.
Well, no, it hasn't. In fact, most of my early deer hunting career, baiting for deer was never an issue. I mean, you put out bait, hunt over bait. I don't know, in a mineral and nutrient-rich state like Nebraska, I don't know that I ever thought it was an incredible advantage. Now, of course, the only type of bait, a person would use usually is like a mineral block or a salt lick. Well, those were kind of naturally found all throughout pasture country here in Nebraska. So it wasn't like it had a huge impact. But, of course, today you start to see a lot of different types of feeders that put out actual, grain pellets and whatnot for deer to consume, and at certain times of the day, and they can be controlled and whatnot. I'm sure those have more of an impact on managing deer movement, but I just didn't grow up with it being an ethical dilemma. So to me, it isn't. It hasn't been.
And this is where I grew up, to the state just east of the Muddy Mow. And this is right from their DNR webpage. I didn't grow up where it was allowed at all. In fact, it still reads, this is right out of the most current hunting regulations for deer for that state. Prohibited devices and activities. They lump it in with a lot of other things. You may not use dogs, domestic animals, bait, radios, handguns, rifles, and crossbows, automobiles, aircraft, drones, electronic calls, or any mechanical conveyance or device to hunt deer. And it goes on later to define what bait is. Bait means grain, fruit, vegetables, nuts, hay, salt, mineral blocks, or any other natural food material, commercial products containing natural food materials or byproducts of such materials transported to or placed in an area for the purpose of attracting wildlife. Bait does not include livestock feed placed during normal agricultural activity. So it pretty well outlaws it. Period.
Well, just bait, handguns,
Bait.
rifles. That was, I mean, whew, man, that's
It's in there with a lot of different things.
it's no Disneyland.
it's
Let's put it that way.
cut and dry, that's for sure. Though you know what you can and you can't do, which some
there's a
hunters
lot
like
you
that
can't
too.
Well, and that's that's Iowa, obviously, and that's worked for Iowa. But and go ahead, we'll talk about how this came
we'll get
about
into
later.
this because we know there's a state to our south that is quite the opposite.
Yep.
Right. And this is from their most current hunting regulations that I was able to find. This was Iowa, I believe, was 22-23, so it's up to date. This one's 21-22 out of Kansas. So under deer, right there where it says deer, common concerns, it is legal to bait deer. That's sentence number 1, comma, turkey and or non-migratory game animals on private lands. Boom. Just to repeat that in case you missed it.
That's Kansas.
It is legal to bait deer,
In
turkey, and other
Kansas.
non-migratory game animals on private lands.
In Kansas.
It is not legal to bait while hunting or preparing to hunt on department or WEHA, which is walk-on access program land. So private lands, just boom, just that. That's all I could find.
So
It is legal.
they don't even restrict quantities. It's just legal.
That's what it says. I didn't see quantities. I searched for bait, and that's
Kansas,
what came up.
it's not known to cause ethical dilemmas.
Yeah.
Now, here, it is interesting, though. I will say that also in those same regulations is 2 full pages, and it might have gone on a little further, talking about chronic wasting disease. And right in there, it specifically says, we highly encourage you not to bait or use feed in these areas or for the transmission of CWD. And you were telling me, Jeff, here in the state of Nebraska, that was kind of the time when we started being concerned and seeing chronic wasting disease is when the baiting laws really changed.
And that's where I got behind the no baiting law, my personal ethics, is because when we started seeing CWD in Nebraska, that's when the law came into effect. And of course, the immediate concern at the time was, baiting certainly congregates deer nose touches and whatnot into smaller areas. And so that wouldn't be good for a state trying to battle, if you will, or reduce the spread of a disease. And so that's the same time that it came out. I think it morphs over time to maybe more, it's an ethical thing for some, whatnot. Like I said, I didn't grow up with it being an ethical issue, so it hasn't been for me, but I get behind it 100% from the standpoint of stopping the spread of disease and so forth.
No, it really makes kind of an interesting thing because, nowadays you don't just talk with Nebraska deer hunters. It's common to get online. You can talk with hunters from around the world, much less across the state line, and finding out what they're able to do and what you're not, and what you're able to do and they can't, and all that type of stuff. So it really kind of sparks some fun conversation, to say the least. And we're not saying Nebraska's going to change their baiting regulations. All that's not what this is about, folks. This is about kind of where you kind of stand or think about it, or some of the things that you can think about. Now we're going to probably have some discussion here, some fun discussion that might not represent not only our agency but our own personal thoughts at times, because I think bait and supplements are definitely here to stay. I mean, just looking at the variety at the big sporting goods stores, people are making some pretty good money on it. Some folks are obviously having some success with it.
Well, one of the arguments continues to be for baiting, for people who are certainly pro baiting, is that
careful with that.
Yeah.
Pro baiting. Yeah.
That it enhances the protein, the nutrients, the overall deer herd, the quality of the deer herd, antler growth, and all that.
A state like Nebraska, does that hold much water?
Well, I mean, you think about it. You look at Nebraska, and what do we have? We have field after field full of grain products and whatnot. So, and then nutrient-rich soils and a lot of native plants and whatnot that carry those same types of mineral support for deer. So, certainly there's times of the year where you could argue maybe that some of those minerals and whatnot are not as readily available to deer or other big game animals versus spring, summer, and early fall. So there you might have that argument, but I would say for the most part, having that big of an impact, I'm not sure that I would see that in Nebraska.
Can you repeat the question?
It's just one of those interesting things that you do hear. As Jeff was pointing out, you do hear a lot about, I'm helping the herd. I'm doing this. I'm giving them something they need. It's going to improve the overall, and I think sometimes we sell that to ourselves and others that, you know, I'm helping every deer, not just the one I really want to shoot and get him to get larger antlers, because we all dream about big antlered deer. That's part of the excitement. Just like going fishing, you're always thinking that the big bucket mouth, largemouth bass that you're going to catch, or the biggest catfish you've ever seen you're going to catch. I mean, it's all part of the fun and anticipation. But it's also one of those things are those minerals really the key to one, healthy deer herds in Nebraska, and two, true antler growth, I guess, is what it comes down to. I'm sure you can argue it both ways. I'm sure there's a lot of research out there that will tell you this product works well, this product doesn't, and then the people making the products will tell you this all works well. You know, personally, I baited where I grew up and hunted in Wisconsin. It's been legal to bait, but I haven't. You know, maybe 5 to 10% of the time I'm out deer hunting, I am hunting over bait, and that's more because where I hunt is, you know, 4 or 5 hours away, and I don't have a feeder to go out there and bait regularly, but I don't have any ethical concerns over it. If I do bait, it's not per se to help the deer health. It's, you know, like you said, it's an attractant to bring in game, and I think that's how I see most hunters perceiving it. Obviously, there's those out there that are seeing it as a way to, you know, increase that antler growth and increase that deer herd to health. But
I mean, it's hard to argue that any mineral you put out there doesn't go toward, if a deer consumes extra mineral,
right,
that it doesn't go toward helping it in some way. I mean, you really that's hard to argue. With the percent gain, you know, again, I think it depends on where you're at in a state like Nebraska, in some of the other states, but you know that. You know, I'm sure there's data.
I wonder, and being that several of us, maybe all of us, are trained biologists, I guess we are looking around the room. I'm guessing that, exactly. It doesn't hurt. But at the same token, there's probably a lot of other factors that roll into it. You know, I think there was even some research recently that had to deal with the health of mom when that buck was born on antler growth and moisture the year or two before and all that type of stuff. There's a lot of different things in there. Minerals didn't really show up as this is the only cause. And not to mention, I mean, it's pretty common knowledge now, probably more so than it was, is, you know, if you harvest a deer at this point, it's not growing any bigger. And that in a lot of hunted populations, I think the average harvested buck is right around 1.5 years old. So you're not ever seeing that express. You're not going to take that 1.5 year old buck and turn him into a 200-inch monster in that amount of time. So, but you've kind of grown up in the area of the regulated baited here in Nebraska, Kayla. How do you see baiting?
Well, when I grew up, we never baited. I mean, we just went out, looked for signs, and that's where we set up. And now that I'm older, getting out on my own, hunting public land, you don't really bait on public land. And working in the wildlife management area, we had like blocks out just so we could see the area or the deer come through, stuff like that. But kind of to what Jeff and Hunter were saying, it's an attractant. It's not really, it's going to help. It's going to help, but I think it's okay to bait, but not hunt over bait as our
bait, which we can differentiate as well. I got to say, where I grew up, I mean, like I said, I grew up east of the Muddy Mow, and, you know, it's not allowed. It wasn't, I mean, that would be called a baiter of anything for animals that you were hunting was about as low as what we might say a ditch hunter is here, a road hunter here in Nebraska. It was considered, man, you have to stoop to that level. And that's just kind of the upbringing and the tradition. Now, like I said, in Kansas, you mentioned no one should bait in a lot of deer hunting company, especially for those that hunt private land in Kansas. It's just like, holy smokes, you just stepped.
Get kicked out of deer
goodness,
camp.
It's God, religion, deer, and bait. I mean, it's just goes hand in hand. That's what are you talking about? That's how you do it, because concentration, all that. That said, trail cameras. That's probably where I really kind of dabbled in a little bit, because you find out fast, and I know some of the listeners are going to agree with this. When you get that first trail camera, you put it up, like, all right, there's a deer trail. I'm going to put this right here, and it's going to get all the deer that pass. And all of a sudden, you get all these pictures of noses or rumps, and that's it, because it triggers maybe fast, and it triggers again maybe as they run past, and then you realize, all right, I got to aim it down the trail parallel more than perpendicular. And if they have something to stop and sniff, then I'm going to get that a posed picture a little bit more. And so, I found myself finding, ears of corn or something like that just to slow them down or do some different scents, even some of the deer attractants, just so they had to stop and stiff and get a better picture of it. I never really thought about it as baiting. I'm not hunting over bait, but I'm definitely getting pictures over
and again, that's another ethical dilemma that states are wrestling with right now. In fact, we've seen quite a few states come up with new laws against trail cams, and so so some of these arguments are certainly ethical in nature. Some of these have some more science behind them a little bit, but in terms of maybe health or no health, I can guarantee you this: the buck I'm hunting this fall, I hope to God he got every ounce of mineral he could last winter. That's all I'm going to say. I hope he found every ounce of mineral he could over the last winter.
Yeah, and that's a great point of when you apply that mineral and when it's put to use. The one thing I do hate seeing is these huge shelves, especially for new hunters, though, and thinking, I want to be a deer hunter. Does that mean I need to buy, should I get a gravity feeder? Should I get one of these timed ones? Do I get just regular deer corn? Do I need to add this supplement? Just like it's not needed. It really isn't. It just kind of complicates it. It's one of those things, I think, as you really get into it, I want to think about deer hunting more often. How do I do that? Well, I want to be more productive. I want to start, I can't hunt deer during this time of year in July. I want to at least do things that are related to deer hunting or get ready for the deer season. And this is what some people do. They put up trail cameras, still kind of early to see a lot of activity with deer moving around. But if I help them out and I start feeding them or something like that. So I think it's just kind of an extension of that out there as well. But it really is interesting. What I do hate, and I'll finish that, is seeing how much more we sell come the end of October, beginning of November.
Yeah, well, and people need to remember.
What scares me
it's
that it's not being used for what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's not legal to hunt over bait in Nebraska, and certainly hunters need to abide by that. And it goes down to when it comes to rules and regulations. It doesn't matter that you like or don't like the rule or regulation. When the governing bodies, and of course in the state of Nebraska, like Nebraska, it's commissioners appointed by our governor to represent regions of Nebraska. So maybe your region, you don't agree with something, but if the consensus of the regions of the state are that this is going to be the law, you got to get behind it. If you're going to choose to hunt, you need to get behind it.
You just need to know them and respect them.
Yep, you need to know and respect the laws, and I think our hunters do that. But you need to know and respect and get behind those laws.
Or if you don't, you can work to change those.
If you want to do that, that's an option as well.
But it will be interesting to see as chronic wasting disease moves across Nebraska. And it's on a continual march. Yeah. To see how baiting is impacted.
And from that point, I have no issue.
The disease and things
with
like that. So, and we've got to make this one a short one because we know there's other people wanting to get into the cabin today. You've probably passed by a couple times. We've got they've got the windows all, the curtains drawn and all that stuff, but you can still feel Julia looking through the windows.
Isn't that cool that we get to use the She Goes Outdoors cabin for our podcast?
No. This is the Hunt Nebraska.
I think it's pretty awesome that we get to use the She Goes Outdoors cabin for the Hunt Nebraska
cabin. Come on, don't give it up that easy.
Don't give it up that easy. Signage indicating which cabin it is.
There's a deer on there, and they're not talking deer today. We are. Since we're going to move this real quick because I do kind of want to get this in my search on the Wisconsin DNR website. Since someone in here is from the state of Wisconsin on baiting, I came across something I didn't think I'd come across, talking about rules and getting behind them or changing them. Deer scents. Have you guys ever used any bottled, or maybe you got it yourself?
Are we talking
deer urines, tarsal glands, any scent attractants, maybe even the acorn or the apple stuff that's been out there? Have you used any of that while deer hunting?
I've used the common sense.
Which is sometimes lacking.
Exactly right. Which we could use more of.
I got to say, I have used it. I don't necessarily believe in it, but it's there have been times where I know that deer have followed that in because they followed my step, all that type of stuff. It's one of those that, some science, some, like I said, goes both ways. But have you guys ever used it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a small 6-point buck come up to some doe and estrus scent this year in Nebraska.
See, and all you need to do is have it once. You'll use it again because it's kind of what harm is it really have?
Of head down on a V line right to you. It makes you think it's works at that point. So,
So that's $6.99 I ever spent.
Boom, and there it is. Have you ever thought about how much you use? Have you ever had a can of it? I had this last year where all of a sudden just like, oh, crap. I left that back at the stand.
It's regulated in Wisconsin.
It
right?
is.
Is it 2 ounces or what is it? 1
Scents, baiting and feeding deer. Scents which are used to attract deer by order may be used for hunting deer statewide, but the scent may not be placed or deposited in a manner that makes it accessible for consumption by deer. Scent shall be removed daily at the end of shooting hours, and I know my can that fell out of my pocket was there for months. Except 2 ounces or less of scent do not need to be removed daily and may be placed, used, or deposited in any place use or hunt over. Yeah, and it goes on. It's just so.
So you got to bring out your measuring vial and kind of pour the right amount. That's
beakers. There's a lot of beakers.
Yeah, I was
in the
going to
hunting
say.
department in Wisconsin.
I wonder the reasoning. I wonder what caused that one. There had to be one instance that came to fruition. Like, we got to regulate this.
Yep, not 3 ounces. 3 ounces, heck no.
At 3 ounces, you're doing something wrong. That's interesting.
What's the Seinfeld, the soup Nazi? They have the deer scent Nazi there in Wisconsin. That probably happened during the czar.
I can tell you this.
The deer czar.
We've probably all used scents and had success with scents. I've shot deer with their nose right down into a little film canister with scent on it, and so scents work. There's no question about it. And again, today I hardly rely on any of that stuff. Now I haven't been as active as a bow hunter as I was a couple of years ago, so I probably would use more scents if I was bow hunting more often. But as a handgun hunter, I just haven't been using much of that stuff.
I think time of year, during the rut too.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
that's when you're using them, so it's a limited time window for them to be effective.
I do know this. If you're going to use scents, like they have a little plastic HS strut wafers and whatnot that you can hang on your clothes and have earth scent, apple scent, and whatnot. You should take those off before you get in your truck and go home, because I mean to tell you that will fill up a vehicle with a smell that you can't get away from.
Doe urine not meant to be sprayed on clothing or hats.
Well, not so much doe urine. That skunk scent's a bad one.
Well,
I can tell you
that's
that
a cover
right
scent.
now. That's right. Don't do that.
All right, we're gonna have to put a bow on this one here, folks. You can weigh in on your thoughts on the bait as well. Perhaps sentence down below, and make sure you give us a like. Until next time. Now, I will say that I had a gentleman that successful deer hunter. His favorite deer scent for attractant and to slow him down was aqua blue velva or aqua velva blue, or however you used to say that. The old aftershave. Yep.
Hunt Nebraska, brought to you by your Nebraska Game and Parks Commission.